listed the best city in the United Kingdom. In fact, it's the best city in the world. And I can see a smile on the face of my station manager, Brother Qasim, because he agrees with me. Yes, we are broadcasting to you for the Body, Health and Mind show on Peterborough's only Muslim community radio station, broadcasted on 106.2 FM and online. We are on YouTube Live. We are also on Facebook Live. And we want you to join in the big conversation. So if you are ready to join in this show, because I really have promoted this show so much, I can't tell you how long I've been waiting to talk about this topic with a specialist. And we have one brilliant specialist on today who I'm going to be introducing in a couple of minutes. But please do encourage you to text and WhatsApp on 07745278978, and you can phone us on our studio telephone number 01733 602 133. So listeners, today we are having the big conversation is around cancer. Cancer is an illness that is feared by most patients that will come in to the surgery for any sign or symptoms. Cancer may come up when you Google your symptoms, and a lot of patients are then led into coming to see their doctors and say, "Doctor, have I got cancer?" It's a big worry. And why is that? Why is it that cancer has so much fear attached to it? I think the reason is because of the symptoms that a patient experiences when they have such a horrible illness. And indeed it is horrible. And I have said in previous shows in the past to you listeners that if there's anything that I worry about, even for myself and my family, it's cancer. And do you know, the statistics are actually staggering. I've said this before and in my promo of this show as well, but I'm just going to highlight and remind you just a little bit about what the statistics are. And cancer mortality for all cancers combined, that is, in the United Kingdom, and the statistics are as of 2014. So if we look at it, there are around 163,000 cancer deaths in the UK in 2014, and that's 450 deaths every single day. And if we break that down into male and female ratios, there were around 86,500 cancer deaths in the UK in 2014, and in females there were around 76,900 cancer deaths in the UK in 2014. And obviously those statistics vary in children and also from cancer to cancer as well. But we have a very special guest on the show, and I'm going to give you a wonderful introduction on our guest. He's an extremely knowledgeable professional who's associated with one of the leading cancer research centres in the world. I have Dr. Khurram Hayat Khan, who's a medical oncologist with a special interest in gastrointestinal oncology, research and acute oncology at the Royal Marsden Hospital. It's a centre of excellence for cancer research in the world. And Dr. Khan actually studied medicine at Dow University of Health Sciences in Karachi in Pakistan. He's helped to edit the 6th edition of Kumar and Clark's Medicine, which is a textbook for final year medical students. It's supposed to be the Bible of medicine for final year students that they use to get through their final year exams. And Dr. Khan competed for his national training number in 2007 from 3 deaneries in the UK and was the only Pakistani to have been awarded the training number in all 3 deaneries at the time. Dr. Khan was awarded his MRCP in the UK in 2007. He then gained his MRCP in medical oncology in 2010 and the European Diploma of Medical Oncology in 2011. He submitted his thesis for a higher degree to the University of London in 2017 and gained a locum consultant position at the prestigious Royal Marsden Hospital in 2017. Now, Dr. Khan actually moved before that to the Royal Marsden Hospital in 2011. And it's the first ever cancer centre in the world and is currently regarded as the second best cancer centre in the world in terms of quality of research and number of citations, which are publications per year. He was able to produce several high-quality publications, and trust me, listeners, I have seen this specialist CV and I was astounded at the number of publications that Dr. Khan actually has. And he spent some time in the drug development unit of the Royal Marsden Hospital and was able to present papers at several international conferences. And he's got a wonderful sort of interest in teaching as well. And he's actually serves as an honorary assistant professor at the Aga Khan University Hospital in Karachi, another very prestigious centre internationally. He's currently working with Professor David Cunningham, who is widely regarded as one of the most influential cancer specialists in Europe and the most outstanding GI oncologists in the world, GI meaning gastro, cancer specialists in the world. Now, Dr. Khan, as I said, is extremely well published. He is the co-author of more than 50 papers in peer-reviewed biomedical journals and has written invited chapters for various oncology textbooks. He's a member of the Royal College of Physicians, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, and the European Society of Medical Oncology. He writes questions for the UK's most prestigious exam in the MRCP and has conducted final part of MRCP exam known as PACES, so he's also an examiner. Now, Dr. Khan has so far invited lectures in King Fahd University Hospital in Saudi Arabia, in Shaukat Khanum Hospital, Lahore, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Centre in New York, Belfast City Hospital, UK, European Society of Digestive Oncology in Barcelona, the American Society of Clinical Oncology in Chicago, and Digestive Disease Week in San Diego. He's also been very active, as I have seen some of his media activities, and have also been a guest on television shows on cancer management when he visited Pakistan. Dr. Khurram Khan, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much, Dr. Shabina, for such a nice intro. It's very kind of you. And it's an honor to be here on your show talking about cancer. And I've seen and heard previous shows of yours, and I think it's a great service that you and Salaam Radio are providing to the listeners, making them aware of various diseases, including cancer.
Well, thank you very, very much for that. And obviously, we can't just take the credit. It's professionals and specialists like yourself, Dr. Khan, who the credit goes to, because you're enriching the knowledge of the community. And it's something that we take great pride in, that you give your valuable time to us. So the people of Peterborough welcome you, and thank you very much for giving some of your expertise. Now, Dr. Khurram Khan, cancer. A big subject of the times, isn't it? And we fear it.
Indeed. You've very kindly presented the figures from United Kingdom, but if I may add that any countries in the world where there is cancer registry, record of the incidence of cancer or an accurate reflection of that, that unfortunately at the moment is limited to mostly the European countries or USA, but so developed countries as such, but not in Pakistan or other developing countries. But the incidence of cancer is 1 in 3, and all the research predictions suggest that by 2020 it would be 1 in 2. So I think this is the magnitude of the problem that we are facing. Essentially, every other person would have cancer at some stage in their lives.
Yes, and that's the very concerning thing, Dr. Khan. Trust me, when I do the school run every morning, I come across a lot of adverts. Obviously, Cancer Research UK, Macmillan, we're going to fight cancer, we're going to get rid of this illness, etc., etc. And so much money is being poured in. Why are we not, we're sort of thinking about the fact that we want to win this fight? What's happening? Why is that the case, that the statistics of the mortality rates are increasing, yet we are investing so much in research?
Sure. I think there are multiple factors. So first of all, in general, if you look at the trend in last 50 years or so, people have started living longer, which is not an excuse for having cancer, but nevertheless, the longer you live, the natural process of aging actually can be one of the risk factors for cancer. Now, there are multiple other factors, but a good example is that of Pakistan, for example, whereby 10 years ago, the average life was around 58 years. When we were growing up, a lot of our colleagues or students, actually their fathers or, their grandfathers or grandmothers were dead in their early 60s or late 50s, and it was the norm in the society. And now you might have noted that that trend has somewhat changed. So on a positive note, people live, the average age as reported by WHO figures is 66 in Pakistan. In UK, it's above 80. So that is just part of the problem that, you will have certain challenges to your body, to your immune system. So the natural environment in the body, which protects you from having illnesses, including cancer, that changes and deteriorates with age and with time, and thus you are more susceptible to such illnesses. But the second other factor is the improvement in diagnosis as well. So people used to die, obviously, previously not knowing that they had a disease, which was called cancer. Now people have more awareness. There's more awareness in the society through the ads and things that you mentioned already about the research as well. So a lot of money is going in there. So whilst the incidence of cancer has no doubt increased in last few years, but the cure rate, which we may talk later about, have improved significantly as well.
Okay.
And then the third factor, which is, I think, in terms of the major factors, is the environmental factors. So, of course, now, the more exposure to planes, jets, etc., the number of cars that have increased, the food habits have changed over the years. So all those factors, when you put them together, the risk of causing a transition from normal cell to the cancerous cell has increased remarkably in last few years. So those are some of the factors which I think are the cause behind more incidence of cancer.
That's right. And it really is a race, isn't it? It really is a race against time because, like you say, the age of patients, etc., the lifespan has increased of people. The cure rates have increased, and I can't tell you how many questions have come to me before the show has started, so I'm going to fit in as many questions as I can. But for the ease of understanding of our patients and our listeners out there, you've already highlighted a little bit in terms of the environmental causes. What about treatments? Now, we know that we have our conventional sort of radiotherapies, chemotherapies, etc., and we have more refined and more newer treatments out there. What's happening in the way of research? Obviously, yourself coming from the Royal Marsden, is there anything to share in the way of, is there anything new or any breakthrough treatment that finally we can say, yes, this is going to help some or more of the cancers?
So I think, talking about cancer in general is a little challenging because, as you know, from top to bottom, you have every organ. Every organ can have cancer. And then every cancer can be of different stages, stage 1 to 4, depending on what is the spread of the cancer, how big is the cancer, etc. So there are a number of factors involved. So research in each area has moved to a different degree. So if I take specific examples of breast cancer or, the colorectal cancer or lung cancer, the three commonest cancers in the world.
Yeah.
So I would say that the best way to look at it is the average survival from advanced breast cancer 15 years ago used to be 12 months or so, around that number. And now the 5-year survival is actually around 50% or so. So, this is the magnitude of improvement. Likewise, in non-small cell lung cancer, which was one of the most lethal cancers in the world, the average survival was 6 months without treatment and 2 to 3 months with the help of treatment. So 9 months generally. But now actually the 2-year survival is around 50% for the right group of patients. So things have moved on. But more importantly, I think we are moving in the direction of a new era of targeted treatment called immunotherapy.
Yes.
So for long, people had believed that it's within the natural environment, the way Allah has created us, we have our natural defense system in the form of immunity, which prevents the cancer and other diseases to happen.
Yeah.
And clearly, for one reason or the other, we discussed some of the factors, but whatever those factors are, which precipitate this natural environment to change into a cancerous environment, the mainstay of why this happens is the changes in the immunity. So the researchers were always keen to form a treatment or to have novel therapies which could actually help the immune system fighting against the cancer, because you're well aware of the chemotherapy and its side effects and other therapies and their side effects. So the best possible way to deal with cancer is to allow the body to somehow reactivate the T cells such that the immune system becomes active and fights against the cancer. So I think this is the biggest development in the field of cancer medicine at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, apart from that, there are many other things. There is MR-Linac, which is a specialized form of radiotherapy. There is stereotactic radiotherapy, which we call as, specific surgery. It's a kind of a surgery people refer to as like burning the lesions. If they are amenable to stereotactic therapy, for example. There are criteria to be met in order to have treatments, but those are the kind of developments in the field. Overall, there are three, I think, just for the benefit of the listeners, broadly, there are three ways you treat cancer. So there is surgery, which I think and which admittedly is the topmost form of treatment, which cures cancer.
Yeah.
The second thing is chemotherapy, which can be used for various reasons, to control the disease, to reduce the risk of cancer coming back, and to palliate the symptoms as well. And the third form is radiotherapy, as you mentioned, which is more localized treatment, where you try to control the disease in a specific area rather than having a systemic effect, as contrary to what you would expect with chemotherapy. Within chemotherapy, you have targeted agents, which have more specific action on certain genes.
Yeah.
And you have immunotherapy, as I mentioned earlier, which allows your immune system to fight against the cancer cells. So this is a broad description of treatment options, which is pretty much applicable to most cancers.
Right. And that's a very good description of the different types of treatments, Dr. Khan. Now, as compared to the United States, for example, where I'm aware that immunotherapy is much more established and sort of much more utilized there in patients, do you think that there is the scope for having more trials on a broader basis rather than the more bigger centres and the tertiary referral centres, obviously the Royal Marsden being the main cancer centre within the United Kingdom, but is there margin for rolling out more trials within the UK in terms of other local hospitals so that other patients get those opportunities for immunotherapy?
I think that's a great question, because it's one of the biggest challenges at the moment to ensure that most patients benefit from these clinical trials, and there are limitations at the moment. Just to address the first part of your comment about the United States. So yes, it is true that in certain centers, in certain areas of US, the access to drugs is probably best in the world for obvious reasons. There is a lot of money involved, and in research, and in certain centers, they have the history of attracting the companies, etc., which does help. But in general, if you just from our listeners' perspective in UK, I think, overall, if you look at the management of cancer, it's probably one of the best areas in the world where you can get cancer care, because one of the things which is often criticized is the NICE approval of certain drugs.
Right, yes, that's right.
It has pros and cons. But I think on the positive note, if you have a drug approved by NICE, which has, by the way, a very stringent criteria, as we all know.
Yes.
But if you get that approval, then the drug should be available in any part of the country, which I think is the beauty of the overall medical care in UK, because what you do not want is that a drug is available in London in certain centers, but not, let's say, in certain areas of Wales or Northern Ireland, or, in less areas where the research is less well established. So that is one thing. But the other thing that you mentioned about improving the chances of getting clinical trials, it's something which a lot of people in UK are working very hard on. And it is one of the reasons why these days, in order to get a specialist post or a consultant post, in most cases, you need to have a higher degree.
Right.
And I think that helps in terms of understanding the importance of research, whether it be lab-based research or translational research, which I think is a more important element, but the two go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah.
So there are lots of efforts, and things have actually overall improved. In that, the NICE now recommends that at least 20% of the patients should be treated within clinical trials. And for that reason, actually, the clinical trials overall or recruitment into clinical trials has improved significantly over the last few years in UK.
Right. So that's brilliant, Dr. Khan. Thank you for that. And if you've just tuned in to us, this is Dr. Shabina Sadkiyoum with Dr. Khurram Khan, who is a specialist in oncology or cancer research at the Royal Marsden Hospital in London. And we are talking cancer. The conversation is about cancer. And we'd like you to join in. Text and WhatsApp us on 07745278978 or our studio telephone number 01733602133. Or you can ask us questions on our Facebook Live video. Now, Dr. Khan, we do have, like I said, this has probably been an area where I have the most questions about this subject. So I have had to pick them meticulously. And I'm going to start off with a question from Brother Amin Qasir, who resides in Saudi Arabia, actually. Took a very great interest in this show and said he was looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Brother Amin Qasir. And he is asked quite a couple of questions. Let's see if we can go through them before we have our break. Is it true statistic that 1/3 of us will develop some sort of cancer in our lifetime? I think you did elaborate on that in the beginning, didn't you?
Correct. That is true, actually.
Right. And how can one check proactively beforehand for early detection of any cancer, which would make it easier to cure? In other words, if we find the cancer in the early stages, is there any way that we can check proactively ourselves as patients?
I think that's a very important question, actually. So it depends on, so first of all, I think it's difficult because, as I said in the beginning, you can have cancer of any part of the body.
Yeah.
But thinking more specifically about it, whilst on one hand, you need to find a balance of getting worried about things which are not relevant, because that will ruin the life if you're worrying about everything. But on the other hand, it's a general awareness of your body. I mean, it's more relevant for our sisters with, breast cancer, obviously, is more common in females. And by the way, it is not non-existent in males either, but clearly it is much more common in females. So, and I've seen actually times and again where, sisters would find a swelling or they will be aware of it, but they try to avoid it. So I think that is just the initial point. When you notice a change in your body which is unexplained, then you need to ask for an opinion from the medics. But more so, then there are some generalized symptoms. With some cancers it is difficult, but there are symptoms which are missed by people as well. So for example, for smokers, they often have a history of cough, but if they notice a change in the character of the cough, if there is any unexplained weight loss, if they have blood in the phlegm, or things which are not normal, this is the easiest way to put it. Anything that you feel is abnormal for your body, you need to pay attention to that. Even because in the worst case scenario, you are worried about something. It actually makes you more anxious. You go to the doctor. So this is all I can appreciate that it's not a great exercise in general when you're in that state of mind. But worst come worst, you go through all these cycles and you find out actually you didn't have cancer. So in the end, you have good news, actually.
Yeah.
So I think this is the way to look at it, so it's better to be safe rather than sorry. So this is in general what you need to do. But you can't really start poking around in your body to find out the new swellings or things like that.
Yeah.
I have to say that cancer actually is a disease which is often it is late in presenting, but when it presents, then you will be the first person to notice it. It's very simple. It's your body. You will be the first person to know that there's something wrong.
Sure. And often we have to be, as clinicians, led by, especially in primary care, led by what our patients' instincts are. So that's very valuable. Brother Amin Qasir also goes on to ask, do we all actually have the cancerous cells in our bodies, but the size of them are so small that they're not detected, hence they're not a worry? And if so, then at what stage do cancerous cells become first stage cancer?
Okay, great. So I think the general principle, what he's probably alluding to, is that how cancer develops in the body.
Yeah.
And he's right in saying that this takes a number of years, actually. So the actual process of a normal cell transforming into a cancerous cell may take up to a few years.
Yeah.
So yes, in certain cases, you may have dysplastic cells which haven't turned into cancer. And then the body's immunity and other defense mechanisms like apoptosis, etc. So not to go into the technical bits, but body has the ability to fight against the cancer cells or transforming cells.
Dr. Khan,
and sometimes, sorry.
Dr. Khan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are coming to a break. Could we continue with this question answer after the break? And in the meantime, listeners, please do keep on sending your questions in. I think the rest of the show will be all about answering the listeners' questions. So don't forget to join us after the break.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
Sadly, millions of orphans living in the poorest countries lack the necessary support for a healthy childhood. These children have to endure lives of hardship without the basic necessities that would help them to grow, to learn, to live. Let's show them that we do care. Let's brighten up their future. Call 0161 225 0225 or visit humanappeal.org.uk.
Do you like the idea of being a radio presenter? Have you got a great idea for a show? Why not get in touch with us? We are always looking for enthusiastic, committed and professional individuals to join our team of volunteer presenters. Send us an email to info@salamradio.co.uk and we'll be in touch. You could be on air sooner than you think.
Third world and developing countries are home to some of the most vulnerable children on the planet. Malnutrition, severe lack of medical aid and access to clean water are just some of the horrific challenges faced by orphans across Africa and Asia. Children of Adam, a Peterborough charity, need your help to bring aid to these orphans for just £25 a month. To sponsor an orphan or assist with other projects, please call 0300 321 0032 or visit www.childrenofadam.net.
Do you have lots of clutter at home or in the office that needs to be kept but nowhere to keep it? Ivet Self-Storage offers a secure, affordable, clean and dry home for your belongings. We have security systems in place which are monitored 24 hours a day, ensuring that your items are safe. With a simple monthly payment, Ivet Self-Storage provides secure and tailored facilities to meet your specific requirements, whether short or long term. We offer the best prices and longest opening hours in Peterborough. For more information, please call on 01733 306 456 or visit us at Ivet Way, Westwood.
Iqra Academy is the only Muslim girls' school in Cambridgeshire where your daughter will develop her knowledge of Islam and the national curriculum in a safe environment. Ofsted has judged the teaching and learning, leadership and management, pupil behaviour and personal development as good in June 2017. Iqra Academy's qualified staff teach in small classes, and the school is producing sports teams who have a track record of succeeding at national level. With reduced fees and a good rating 3 times from Ofsted, why not consider Iqra Academy for your daughter? Enroll now to avoid disappointment. Please contact 01733 331 433 or email admin@iqraacademy.org.uk.
أو عابر سبيل. وكان ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما يقول: إذا أمسيت فلا تنتظر الصباح وإذا أصبحت فلا تنتظر المساء.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim Community Radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome back. It is the Body, Health and Mind Show with your very own Dr. Shabina Asad Qayyum here, and we have our special guest with us, Dr. Khurram Khan, who is a specialist, an oncologist, cancer specialist at the Royal Marsden Hospital in London. So we're very, very grateful for him, for his time. And we've got so many questions that I've just decided we're going to crack on with the questions, because it is really about the concern that you have regarding this horrible, horrible illness and condition known as cancer. And before the break, we were actually talking, we were answering Brother Amin Kasser's question, and you were talking about at what stage do these cancerous cells become first-stage cancer, Dr. Khan?
Yes, indeed. So as I said, I think, this is a process that takes over years actually to happen. And really, the gist of the whole discussion is that we need not to worry about what's going inside the body. Being believers as well, I think one has to somehow be content with, whatever in the end, the outcome is. But the main thing is that when something happens, our concern should be at this stage, first of all, what we can do to prevent these things. And those, general lifestyle measures are, I think, well established. So within the time constraints, I wouldn't go in too much details. But for example, quitting smoking, alcohol, has its own problems. Then you have weight gain. So these are the three big things, dietary habits, which actually contribute to different types of cancers.
Yeah.
So trying to prevent that happening is entirely justifiable, and that's what we should be looking at. But on the other hand, once the cancer has developed, I think then the main thing is to present early enough. And just for the benefit of the listeners, it's not a religious talk, but I was inspired by the fact that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually advised people to seek medical advice, essentially. So there are clear narrations, which are Sahih narrations. So I think the bottom line is that, yes, it is a process which is ongoing for a long time in the body, but we need not to worry about it, because whether that cancer cell would become cancer or not is not known. And there's no way of scientifically establishing that either. There are some new research in that area where we are looking at taking plasma samples. I'm working personally on that area as well, where cancer could be predicted, through blood tests. But at the moment, we are far from it.
Wow. Well, that's a very interesting development. So it's sort of about watching this space, isn't it, Dr. Khan?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So the other question that's come through, again, by Brother Amin Kasser, is what is the nourishment for cancerous cells to grow? Or is there anything that exists, for example, like sugars or heavy meat diets, etc.? I know that we've had some publications a couple of weeks ago to a couple of months ago saying that actually red meat is one of the precursors or risk factors to developing cancer.
Well, that's, again, an area which is relatively not well studied. The problem is that these data come often from cohort-based studies.
Sure.
So, so just for the benefit of the listeners, the issue is that the most reliable data come from randomized clinical trials.
Yeah.
And it's not possible to truly link the risk factors unless you have two groups, one without, for example, sugar, one with sugar, for X period of years, and then you report on the outcomes. So yes, there are some reports which suggest that there is possibly some association with red meat, possibly some association with high sugar intake as well. But my overall view is that anything which is done in moderation actually is good. So, to cut down on something altogether probably may not help, because at the same time you want to have a strong body, you want to be engaged in exercise, which is a more healthy way of preventing the chance of having cancer rather than dieting alone. So I think the basic thing is that you try to have a BMI which is within the desired range. of 25 or below. For Asians, actually, they suggest 24. But I think the bottom line is that you try to optimize it by having a good balanced diet and good exercise.
Yeah, and that's something that I've always stressed on my shows as well, Dr. Khan. And for the benefit of the listeners that are listening out there, how many times is it that I have said, don't smoke? And I know that there are people that are watching and are listening and you do smoke, etc. And there are so many facilities out there to help you to stop it. It is something that's quite lethal to your health. And the sooner we realize these things, the better outcomes we are going to have in life. And another question that's come through is it true that being happy, laughing, exercising regularly, not stressing, etc., starves off cancer cells to grow and that it allows the good cells to overcome the bad cells? I, for one, am very glad that you are here as the expert to answer that question because I wouldn't have a clue.
I think, again, this is one of those things which people can hypothesize about, but there's no way of confirming that. What I can say is that there are studies which have shown that once you have cancer diagnosed and you're on treatment, then having a positive attitude leads to positive outcomes.
Yeah.
And there are obvious reasons for that. The chemotherapy can be quite challenging, daunting. So, those who have a positive attitude are able to go through that, number of cycles of chemotherapy more ably compared to people who are more suspicious about it right from the beginning. So perhaps that, but also there might be some hormonal effects which we are not aware of. But there's no harm in staying happy, I would say.
Yes.
So, of course, if you're positive, then maybe there is an effect, but that would never be established as a true effect.
Absolutely. So, yes, always stay happy. There's nothing to be miserable about. You have Salaam Radio and the show and the Body Health and Mind show. And if you're not happy, you can talk to me. And I know ways of making you all happy. So, yes, follow Dr. Khan's advice and stay happy. Now, I've got a question here. It's a very interesting one. It's from a Michael who's listening to us actually from Leicester, which is wonderful. Now, he is asking, do the energy from microwaves pose a risk to us in the household for cancer? Because personally, I have stopped using one.
Thanks, Michael, actually, for listening to the show. I think that's a very important and interesting question. And I have also read anecdotal reports. Actually, there are some cohort-based studies, again, where people have reported the risk of cancer associated with these additional rays. Some people talk about mobile phone, and the secret rays that come from mobile phones as well. I wouldn't have any doubt that in the end, these things have possibly some effect, right? Because this is what we refer to as environmental changes. Because if you as such, apart from the as I said in the beginning, apart from the fact that we're more dependent on the cars, we are, flying a lot, etc. So the environmental threats are always there, the industries and growth of the industries, etc. But clearly, the electronics have changed dramatically during our lifetime. So it would be difficult to establish a true link, though, because again, it's on the same line as I've said before. The risk. The cause-risk association actually is a very difficult analysis. So it may well be, as you know, you might have seen patients who, come to you and tell you that, they used to smoke, but in those days it was the fashion to smoke. So likewise, it might well be that 40 years later, we established that actually mobiles were used and, it was so commonly used that nobody could have thought that they could be linked to a disease. And yes, they were in the end. But it's very hard to claim that at this point.
Yeah, so very fair answer actually from you there. So Michael, I hope that's answered your question. I have another question here from Irfan. I was told that everyone has some sort of cancer. When sometimes it is discovered, is it the treatment that triggers it to replicate and spread, especially with chemotherapy? Is this true? And if not, why do people on chemotherapy feel more unwell than before they discovered they had cancer?
Well, that's a very good question from Irfan, actually. So first of all, I think this is just a myth. So please forget about it. I can assure you that it's nothing like chemotherapy precipitating the cancer. So what happens is that chemotherapy, particularly in the patients where there is advanced disease, works in only a proportion of patients. So it does not work in every single patient. So if, for example, the good response to chemotherapy is considered if it works for at least half of the patients, 50%. And what that means is that 50% of the patients would not benefit from treatment. So if you look at it from a different perspective, so when it does not work, then people may get the impression that it was a chemotherapy actually which precipitated the development of cancer or progression of cancer.
Right,
and that's obviously not true. It's just that the cancer did not respond to the chemotherapy. The second part of the question is about side effects from chemotherapy. And indeed, that is the challenge that we as oncologists and patients in the community are facing. Because what you're trying to do is to deal with a very aggressive disease. So the cancer cells replicate very quickly, and you need to have the treatments which actually target those cells. And in doing that, they target all the cells which divide rapidly. So, for example, bone marrow is one of the tissues which produces rapid cells, actually. And that can, lead to problems with the bone marrow, which further increases the risk of infections, risk of having bleeds, etc. So therefore, mucositis, etc. All those things actually are part and parcel of the treatment, because bearing in mind you're trying to deal with a very aggressive disease. So patients may feel unwell for a period of time, but I have to say that generally speaking, we make this decision carefully, and we try to offer chemotherapy to those patients who we think are fit for the treatment. And then they are made aware that, yes, there is a chance that they may feel miserable for a period of time, but overall it's for the benefit of the patient so that they can live longer and overall could have a better quality of life.
Right. And that's very well answered. I must say it was something that I couldn't answer. Irfan, I hope that has answered that question for you. Now, I'm coming on to a question here. It's quite lengthy, but it's a bit of a difficult one for me, it would be anyway. That there was a very big story in 2015 regarding Ashia King, the little boy whose parents were caught, put into jail for taking him to Prague for proton beam therapy. Why does the establishment here place such restrictions on making decisions for our children? Why, if we are not happy with a treatment, do we have to sit and see our child suffer because a specialist somewhere takes an ego trip and feels it is a judgment on them when we want to explore options elsewhere? It happened to a friend of mine who wanted to take her child abroad for treatment, and the specialist was going to refer my friend to social services if she did. Her child now has a brain tumour and is not responding to treatment. It infuriates me. Now, before Dr. Khan obviously puts in sorry, I'm just going to check what your name is again. Isha. Obviously, there's a lot of ethical implications here involved. Every case is very different. And within the UK, we are governed legally by rules as medical professionals, and we do not work or operate clinically outside those rules. Obviously, Ashia King happens to be a very famous story that was published in 2015, but in regards to that as well, every individual case is different. So we obviously can't comment individually on that case, but do you have any thoughts at all to second that, Dr. Khan?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think, look, on the individual cases, anecdotal experiences, first of all, on this case, as you said, we're not in a position to comment. But in general, I would say that these decisions are made within certain reasons and certain regulations. So with the children, I can imagine it is a bit more tricky because, calling the social services, it can be quite distressing for the parents, which I would appreciate. And, and I'm sure the parents are trying to do everything in the best interest of the child. But I have to say that, when you're on the other side, you try to deal with issues more objectively, right? As a father or as a mother, if unfortunately your child has a tumor, then you would like to do everything in the world possible to try and cure this disease or cancer. Absolutely. If it is cancer. So, but on the other hand, if I'm the oncologist, I don't treat children, but I can say that generally, if you know that the disease has certain limitations as to what treatment you can offer, and that would just palliate the tumor and the symptoms, and you can prolong the survival, but you cannot cure the disease. So you cannot go outside that boundaries which your knowledge and your training has offered to you. So the parent might feel that, okay, I'll take my child to Germany or India or somewhere else, or Pakistan, where somebody is offering a surgery, but you may feel in your position that it's not in the best interest of the child, because it's in the end not going to cure the child, but it will cause more problems for the child, and it would be an unethical operation. Yeah. So, for adults, it's different, because adults are, they can take their own decisions, even if you can at best tell them that, look, this is not sensible, this is not justifiable as per our medical knowledge and skills. But in the end, if an adult says, look, I have metastatic disease, I want to go to X surgeon who is happy to take every single lesion out, then you have to say, okay, good luck, Yeah. So it's not the same with the children.
Yeah, that's right there. And obviously, Isha, we do sympathize with your friend's situation, and the obviously the empathy is there, and we do wish him or her the very best in the future, and we'll hope that, and are optimistic that hopefully treatment will be effective with him. So thoughts do go out with you at this time, and we understand it's a very difficult time as well, and I hope that Dr. Khan has been able to satisfy your question. I have a question from Riaz. Thank you very much, Brother Riaz, who has asked us here, when a patient has been given the all clear from cancer, are they at a more increased risk of catching it again? And I am finding the show very interesting, Dr. Khan. I feel very privileged that you are speaking to us all the way from London. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Riaz, for your kind comments. It's not that they are more prone to catching cancer. It's just that they have a higher risk of relapse of cancer.
Right.
And that relapse also varies from cancer to cancer, individual to individual. Mm-hmm. So that risk can be estimated depending on various factors and the type of cancer those patients have. So indeed, overall, once you're diagnosed with cancer, then you remain on surveillance for that very reason, that the cancer can come back. But I wouldn't want this to be generalized, because just to put it in perspective, if somebody has a lymphoma and it is completely cured, an early stage lymphoma, the risk of relapse might be something like 5 to 10% over 5 years. On the other hand, if somebody has advanced or even early stage pancreatic cancer and it's been completely cured, but the risk of relapse might be somewhere in the order of 80%. So it's a broad spectrum, and it needs to be contextualized within an individual patient's case.
Right. And I think that was a very appropriate answer, because it varies from cancer to cancer, Brother Riaz. So I really do hope that you feel satisfied by that answer. Now, I have my own questions, Dr. Khan. I've always been under the impression that a lot more funding is given to treatment as compared to treatment in research, given to research for treatment as opposed to funding for prevention of cancer. Is that true? And if not, why isn't it? Why aren't we working a little bit more on finding out how to prevent cancer in the first place?
You're absolutely spot on. Actually, recently there has been a change in CR UK's, the Cancer Research UK and Biomedical Research Centre, BRC's, funding. The way they're working now is more towards prevention rather than, the treatment options alone. But traditionally that has happened all across the world. And I think part of the reason was that, as we discussed earlier, with the development of various malignancies in such a short space of time with such high mortality, the initial focus remained at cure or treatment of cancer, which was understandable given that we were hit by so many cancers and so many staggering figures, as you mentioned earlier, in a short space of time in last 20-30 years or so. But in the end, the real one of the most important components of cancer management would be, I agree, prevention of cancer. And yes, this is an under-researched area. And actually, we in our meetings discuss this times and again as well as to what the strategies could be to prevent cancer happening. And I think one of the challenges is that it's not just based, as I mentioned earlier, the research in this is quite challenging because a lot of studies would be cohort based, and how to distribute the resources, what best to do. It is one of the difficult areas, but all I can say is that we are working on it, and likewise other researchers in UK have changed their priorities in that sense as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you for answering that question. I think something that also comes to my mind is we're always compared in the United Kingdom with Europe, etc., and how our rates of cure are as compared to Europe. Where do we actually stand with the rest of Europe, Dr. Khan, in terms of our cure rates?
So in terms of the published figures, there are countries which do better than us. So admittedly, Scandinavian countries, Germany, there are 2 or 3 countries which have less mortality compared to UK. But it's a bit more complex, actually, because the cancer registry system in UK is excellent. So you being in the primary care know very well that, cancer case is registered as a cancer case straight away.
Absolutely.
So even that case, so you might have seen patients who never received anti-cancer treatment or just were suitable for palliation, they are still considered as cancer patients. So their mortality obviously affects the averages. So it's not an excuse, but I have seen that in other countries where I've traveled to, the cancer registry system is relatively weaker. So in, for example, Italy or France, where I've traveled to, generally a cancer patient is called a cancer patient once they reach the cancer center.
Yeah.
So, so there are lots of cases who die without the diagnosis of cancer, and therefore the figures overall look better. But this is one part of the explanation, but clearly we are trying to improve the figures as well. So as you're aware of this 2-week, cancer referral pathway rule, cancer careway pathway rule. So I think those are the sort of things which are happening now to ensure that patients who are suitable for early access to the oncology services, particularly surgery, get those interventions done as soon as possible.
Okay. And last but not least, Dr. Khan, and I'm sure every single specialist in cancer who has been invited to any radio show, or indeed yourself when you've gone to any TV shows, you must have been asked this question. So please give me some hope, give our listeners some hope. Do you think ultimately we will find the cure to this horrid disease of cancer?
Inshallah, I'm quite confident we will. And it's not just based on the scientific progress being made in the field, but I'll like to end up with this Sahih Hadith again, in which Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that Allah has given us diseases, but there's not a single disease for which He hasn't offered a cure. So I think it's just a matter of finding the cure, and we should take hope from the fact that tuberculosis or infections, there was a time 100 years ago or 80 years ago when they didn't have a cure. And today we know that all these diseases can be quite easily cured. I mean, there was a time when even penicillin was not available. So things have changed, and I'm sure with regards to cancer as well, inshallah, things will change in future.
That is absolutely wonderful. Now, you've given me some hope and optimism, and hopefully, inshallah, the way you've said it with such faith, and that is, the mainstay of us as a Muslim community, that we lay a lot of emphasis on our faith, and that gives us the hope. So you have, mashallah, given me that hope, and obviously to a lot of the listeners that are listening in today, and what a wonderful show it's been. We've had some wonderful engagement, and Dr. Khan, I would really like to thank you on behalf of the listeners, Salaam Radio, those that have been listening to us nationally and internationally. I would really like to thank you very much for taking out your valuable time today to speak to us.
Thank you very much to you, Salaam Radio, and all the listeners, actually.
Thank you. We will be gauging your expertise, inshallah, in the near future as well.
Inshallah. Sure.
Jazakallah and assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So listeners, that was our very own Dr. Khurram Khan from the Royal Marsden Hospital. And my goodness, what an absolutely wonderful show that was. I have learnt so much from his expertise and from his education and his insight and the wealth of knowledge that he has. And the thing that really did inspire me about Dr. Khan was the fact that he had such a calmness and positivity about him. There was that aura there, and there was so much knowledge imagine there's so much for us to thrive upon. I know so much more about cancer now that I can take this knowledge and speak to my patients about it. And inshallah, I endeavour to bring Dr. Khan on again in the future, if you so wish, and we can talk about cancer even more. Now we are reaching the end of our show, dear listeners, and I always say that I wish I had more time, because I am a bit of a person who likes to talk about these things. I talk non-stop. But as they say, Salaam Radio must go on and the show must go on. And I want to remind you about an event that's going to be taking place on the 25th of November, known as the Pride of Pakistan. It's a 6-city tour. It's being sponsored by Human Appeal, and it's coming to Peterborough on the 25th of November. And the guests will be Iqrarul Hassan Wasim Badami, and it's being hosted by Zahir Khan. The tickets are £5. The venue's at the Bull Hotel in Westgate. For tickets, please contact Brother Qasim on 077 2255 8884. And with that, my dear listeners, I will join you next week, where the topic will be all about mental health. Once again, we have a wonderful guest who we've had on before. We will be having the very Dr. Shahid Latif, the expert in mental health problems. And I really can't wait to host the show. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you so much for taking part. And once again, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. So don't forget to tune in next week. This is Dr. Shabina Sadqiyum for the Body, Health and Mind Show.